Let's talk about something we've all seen. You get a team of brilliant people together. I mean, absolute experts in their fields. And yet, the project somehow still goes completely off the rails. It is so frustrating, right? Well, today we're going to unpack this hidden flaw that explains why even the most talented teams can end up creating massive, unforeseen problems. And it has a name: methodological isolation. I mean, this is the central puzzle, isn't it? On paper, everything looks perfect. Everybody is doing their job correctly, the models are sound, the data is clean, but the end result is just chaos. It feels like this big mystery, but what if I told you it's not a mystery at all? What if it's actually a predictable pattern? You know this scene. I bet you can picture it right now. You've got the engineers, the marketers, the safety officers, the finance team, all in one room, but they're speaking completely different languages. They're using their own models, tracking their own metrics. Each person is a genius in their own little world, but those worlds just are not connecting. And that's exactly where the problem begins. Okay, so let's start by looking at this first symptom, because this isn't just a simple case of bad communication, it's something much deeper, a structural issue. So what do we actually call this thing? Well, the root cause we're diving into has a formal name. Let's define methodological isolation. So simply put, methodological isolation is what happens when a team gets so specialized that it basically creates its own bubble. And inside that bubble, they've got their own tools, their own jargon, their own way of looking at the world, and it's completely cut off from other experts, even the ones working on the very same project. And this little phrase gets right to the heart of the danger. The group becomes self-referential. They start validating their own work using their own methods. It's kind of like they're marking their own homework, you know? There's no outside perspective to challenge their assumptions. So the work might be technically perfect inside their bubble, but it's dangerously disconnected from the real world. Think of it this way. Each department, in its pursuit of excellence, accidentally builds a massive wall around itself. But here's the thing. Complex problems need bridges between these areas of expertise, not walls that keep everyone apart. All right, now let's talk about the consequences. Because this isn't just some abstract idea. Methodological isolation has real, tangible, and honestly, often dangerous effects on projects and organizations. This isolation, it spreads, causing about 4 key types of damage. It creates those silos we just talked about. It blinds us to these huge cascading risks. It can make our attempts to fix things actually worse, and it leaves us with a really shallow understanding of why people do what they do. Let's break those down. Okay, look at how this plays out. You've got psychologists studying how individuals handle risk, but they're doing it in these sterile lab settings. At the same time, you've got sociologists studying group behavior, but they're using these overly simple models of how individuals think. Both teams are doing great work in a vacuum, but their answers are incomplete. And because they're not talking to each other, they end up creating policies that are pretty much destined to fail. This isolation also makes us totally blind to what are called cascading risks. It's a domino effect, literally. One department makes a decision that's perfectly logical for them, but that decision knocks over a domino which triggers a failure in a completely unexpected area. The whole system gets more and more fragile, and nobody understands why, because each team is only looking at its own single domino. And all of this leads to this really dangerous, kind of counterintuitive idea called suboptimization. This is when a team works incredibly hard to perfect its own little piece of the puzzle, but because they're totally disconnected from the whole, their perfect solution ends up creating massive problems for everybody else. It actually damages the entire system. So how do we fix this? It sounds pretty bad, but the good news is there is a cure. It's all about intentionally breaking down these walls and building what are called integrated frameworks. The solution really comes down to a fundamental shift in the questions we're asking. The isolated approach asks, is my part correct? But the integrated approach, the one we want, asks, how does my part affect the whole? We have to move our focus from perfecting our own little discipline to understanding how everything interacts. The goal is no longer about creating perfect little pieces, it's about building resilience for the entire system. So, what does this actually look like in the real world? Well, it means combining different types of models, quantitative and qualitative, instead of just trusting one. It means getting your safety, security, and risk teams in the same room, speaking the same language. And it means putting engineers, behavioral scientists, and policy experts on the same project from day one. So, what's the big takeaway here? The true antidote to why smart teams fail is learning to see the entire system, not just your own little piece of it. And to be really clear, this is not about saying anyone's methods are wrong. Engineering models are vital. So is behavioral science. The problem isn't the methods themselves, it's that they're isolated. So the solution, therefore, isn't replacement, it's integration.
Look, this doesn't mean every engineer needs to go get a PhD in psychology. That's impossible. It just means fostering a culture where that engineer is curious about what the psychologist knows, and the project manager's main job is building the bridges so they can share that knowledge effectively.
So I'll leave you with a challenge. Take a look at your own work, your own team. Where are the walls that are keeping smart people apart? And what's one small bridge, just one, that you can start building this week?